A very good afternoon, everybody, and good morning to those that might be joining us from, well, there are people who are joining us from the US. Good morning to you. Good afternoon to those that are joining us from this part of the world. My name is George Makore, and I'm going to be taking the role of introducing our webinar, as well as just welcoming everybody. The role that Golden was supposed to do, I would like to apologize on behalf of Golden. He is not going to be able to join us for this webinar. He is attending to an urgent matter that he couldn't duck out of. We are ready to start. I'm sure you can hear me loud and clear. So for me, the webinar that we're going to have today is very critical in the sense that for most of the time that we've interacted with exporters who will be looking at exporting, be it to South Africa or to the US, one main issue that has come out is the issue of complying with market entry requirements, be it private standards or technical regulations or other voluntary or any other voluntary regulations or standards. So one aspect that we have as the USAID Southern Africa Trade and Investment Hub have been trying to work around is how we can best assist would-be exporters with issues to do with complying with standards. And the organic certification sector or organic product sector, let me put it that way, is one that also has that the need for that requirement. So we saw it necessary for us to come up with a session where we can all gather around and discuss the organic farming as well as the certifications required and the market trends, hence the webinar we are having today. So the main purpose of this webinar is really to listen to views from experts on the issue of organic farming certification and market trends. But before I do that, for those that do not know me, my name is George Makore. I am the Deputy Chief of Party for the USAID Southern Africa Trade and Investment Hub project. I would like to go on and just say a few words about what the USAID Southern Africa Trade and Investment Hub is all about. And we are a USAID funded project which works across 8 countries in Southern Africa. Although we are a USAID Southern Africa project, we do not cover all the 16 other countries. The countries that we focus on are mainly Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Namibia, Malawi, Mozambique, Zambia, and South Africa. I always want to call them SACU +3 because we're looking at the 5 SACU countries, Southern Africa Customs Union countries led by South Africa, as well as 3 other countries, Mozambique, Malawi, and Zambia. So across those countries, we have 3 main objectives or 3 main areas that we focus on. The first one being working with the 7 countries out of the 8 that I mentioned So we're looking at increasing trade between the 7 countries and South Africa. So, for example, we look at exporters in Eswatini or Botswana who have products that have demand in South Africa or are demanded in South Africa, to get them to meet with buyers and be able to then strike deals between them and buyers in South Africa. And linked to that, we also look at the 8 countries, the 7 plus South Africa, and the products that they can produce, which are in demand in the US, and we then link them, the exporters, with buyers or potential buyers in the US, to export products to the US under the African Growth and Opportunity Act AGOA program. So those are 2 main objectives that guide us in our work. The third one is to look at how we can boost capital and technology flows from South Africa to the other 7 countries that I mentioned. And here we are looking at capital or technology that will be demanded or will be required in the 7 countries. Then we identify investors who would be interested in investing in those areas in those 7 countries that I mentioned. Those are our 3 main objectives. Those are the areas that we operate under. Next slide, please, Tanya. So in putting together this, we realized the importance of partnering with a number of both regional as well as international organizations or business membership organizations. The regional business membership organizations that we are partnering with today, or we partnered with in coming up with this very important webinar, the Malawi Organic Producers Association, Namibia Organic Association, Organic Producers and Processors Association of Zambia, in the South African Organic Sector Organization. And these are partners that we have continued to work with in ensuring that we are able to reach out to as many producers as we can. And we'll continue to work with and through these associations as we go forward. Now, about today's session, let me take you through the roadmap on which we're going to travel in the next 1.5 hours as we go through this program. So to take us through, or to help us understand what is happening in this sector that we're talking about, we do have a number of experts, both from the US as well as from the region, who are going to help us discuss or provide information on what organic farming certification as well as market trends are all about. We're looking at going through this webinar for the next 1.5 hours, like I said, so we should be done around 4:30, and I hope that will not keep you longer than that. Next slide, please. So just so that we know who is among us, who is here with us on this webinar. So we do have, like I said, representation from the 8 countries that we operate in. Of course, we have 7 registered participants from Botswana, 9 from Eswatini, and Malawi with 4, Mozambique with 14, Namibia 6, South Africa has the largest number of 25, and we have 2 from Zambia in 3 others. I know there might be some who registered later or late, and they might not have been picked here, because I see now the participation or participants we are seeing here over the number 74 we have there, but we're looking at having more as well. So please, if I didn't mention anybody or somebody who is registered here, please forgive me. But also to just also indicate the gender representation, we have 45 females as well as 33 males under amongst ourselves here. And this is a very good balance in terms of the participants. Now, without much further ado, I would like to call upon my colleague, Cosmas Mamunze, who is the portfolio manager for Botswana, Namibia, and Malawi, who is going to be taking us through the presentations. His role is going to be to call upon and introduce the presenters as we go through our program. Cosmas, over to you.
Thank you, George, and good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, everybody. As George has indicated, my name is Cosmas Mamunze. I will be introducing our speakers. We have got a very good lineup of our speakers today. To start with, we have got Alexis Carre. She is with the US-based Organic Trade Association. She has worked with since 2018. She has facilitated dialogue on international trade issues related to the topic that we are touching on today, which is organics. And right now she's based in Washington, DC. So Alexis is going to talk to us about the organic market trends in the United States. Over to you, Alexis.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen. One moment. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Kos, for the introduction. I am really excited to be speaking with you here today. Again, my name is Alexis. I work for the Organic Trade Association, headquartered in Washington, which is also where I am currently. So today I want to cover just briefly about the trade association, who we are, what we do, before I can get into market trends, market data from the United States, talk about some trade data as well, and resources for you to learn more about the market. So we can just jump in. All right, the trade association. So we are a membership-based business association for organic companies. Anyone can join the trade association that has USDA NOP certified organic products. The majority of our members are from the United States. We do have a handful of international members as well. Another important component of the trade association is our board is democratically elected by our membership base. We have about 9,500 members. They cover the entire supply chain. So everyone from your small grower in Washington State to retailers like Whole Foods, to importers and exporters, certifying agencies, consultants, your general processors, ingredient companies, etc. So we really, our membership does cover the organic industry as a whole. We have 5 really key priorities that we focus on at the Trade Association. So first, legislative and regulatory work. We have a really robust government affairs team that is constantly working with Congress, with different facets of the government to advocate for organic in policies. So both state policies at the representative level as well as national policies. We work with USDA really frequently. We also have a Farmers Advisory Council that comes to DC real often and lobbies Congress here in the Capitol. Our regulatory team, also quite robust. They basically are our in-house organic standards experts, and they work really closely with the National Organic Standards Board as well as stakeholders to get feedback on where organic needs to advance, where we need to move forward in terms of U.S. organic regulations. And they really, crowdsource that information from our members and get it in front of USDA, the National Organic Program, and the Standards Board. Our International Trade Department, that is my role. It's divided into two sectors. We have the trade promotion side and trade policy side. So on the promotion side, I work with US companies. We go all over the world in not pandemic times for trade shows. We exhibit probably at least 1 or 2 trade shows a month. Globally, we also bring foreign buyers to the United States to see trade shows here and connect with US suppliers in the United States. On the trade policy side of my work, I work closely with the Foreign Agricultural Service at USDA on trade barrier issues. So I facilitate, as Cus mentioned, member dialogues on, anything from, hey, I have a product that was being traded into Korea and there's a new trade policy that's preventing that. How do we fix that? Things like that. So I get to do both the promotion and the policy side. It's really exciting and interesting work. We have a really robust communications team, frequently helps out our members, just make sure they're spreading the most relevant news on organic out to consumers. We do annual market intelligence research, and I will be sharing the results of that with you today. And then lastly, we have a sister organization, the Organic Center, who really looks at the science behind organic, why it's better for people, the environment, animal welfare, etc. And so we collaborate really closely with the Organic Center on the actual science basis behind why organic is the right choice. So with that, I will get into market data. In 2019, US organic market sales were about 55 billion US dollars. So a little over 50 billion of that comes from food sales, and a little over 5 billion of that comes from non-food sales. The US is the largest organic market in the world, and it's continuing to grow every year. I will say that the food market right now hovers about 91% of the total market share. The non-food market is still about 10%. But over time, particularly probably in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see the non-food market continue to grow and gain a little more permanence in the total US market. So I want to spend a couple minutes kind of digging in on this chart here. It shows overall sales and growth 2010 to 2019. You'll notice for the organic food, the growth percentage really peaked in 2013, 2014, and since then the actual market growth has been declining. The reason for that is that as the US organic market matures, it's become just saturated here. Families, consumers are buying organic without necessarily thinking twice about it. The market has just expanded and it's become pretty commonplace and standard. So as this happens, naturally the growth rate is going to slow because the market penetration is already pretty full. But we are seeing the food market still continue to grow. And I will touch on impacts from the COVID pandemic in a few slides, but we are expecting in the 2020 growth numbers to be huge as a result of people cooking at home, people seeking out food that's better for them. I will point out that the growth rate for the non-food market is still really high, and this is why we expect this market sector to continue to really grow in the next 5-10 years. It's still hovering about 9%. And so this non-food market covers fibers, supplements, personal care, flowers, pet food, things like that. And so there's still a lot of space for this market to grow. Total growth for the organic market as a whole, about 5%. We like to point out that the U.S. conventional food market is growing at about 2%. So we're still showing really, really strong growth in organic. So next, this slide breaks out food sales and non-food sales by product. So starting with the food sales, fruits and vegetables really dominate the largest market share. It's for a few reasons. First, for consumers that are maybe new to organic, it's a little bit easier for them to understand why fruits and vegetables that haven't been sprayed with harmful chemicals or pesticides are better for them, and that's just easier to conceptualize. Another reason is that the price difference in a lot of US retailers between organic fruits and vegetables and conventional continues to shrink. So for example, like in my grocery store, the organic apples probably retail for about 75 cents a piece, and conventional apples probably retail about 50 to 55 cents a piece. So that 20-cent difference is not a huge barrier for a lot of consumers. And so purely because the price doesn't provide a barrier for fruits and vegetables in particular, that market share continues to be strong. The other larger shares of food sales are beverages and dairy and eggs. We're seeing a ton of innovation in organic beverages. Coffee and tea kind of started it off, but now we have like kombucha and fortified metabolic drinks for your body. And so the beverages sector just continues to grow, and we're expecting that market share to continue expanding. Dairy and eggs has actually faced a little bit of market stagnation recently. There has been an oversupply of milk in particular, and also with consumers shifting to more plant-based beverages like soy milk, oat milk, that demand has gone down. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the dairy market over the next few years. I want to shift and talk about the non-food sales just briefly. Fiber still makes up the majority of the market. So this is like your organic cotton t-shirt that you could purchase at a Patagonia retail outlet, or like organic towels that you would put in your bathroom. However, the supplements category is growing pretty rapidly. We're gonna see that one expand as well in the future, especially, and that's another one we're watching with the COVID pandemic, as more people are looking for anything that will help their immune system. Organic supplement sales have really gone up. I will also touch on personal care. That is like, skin care, body care products, shampoo, conditioner, things like that. That category is continuing to expand as well. So I'll touch on food sales by channel just briefly. So mass market retail still is the dominant food channel for organic in the United States. So this is retailers like Costco, Kroger, Albertsons. One reason, and I'll put Walmart in there as well. One reason that this is the case is that they just have the largest consumer reach. The majority of consumers are still shopping at these mainstream outlets. Another reason, though, is that a lot of these retailers have started to develop private label brands for their own stores. So pretty much every large retailer now has a private label brand that includes a significant amount of organic, and that's how they are trying to compete with some of these like natural and specialty stores that have been selling organic for a long time. They're creating their own label and usually able to do it at a pretty significant price difference from a lot of the natural and specialty stores. However, the natural and specialty retailers still comprise a really significant share of the market. Lastly, I just want to point out internet sales were about 4.5% in 2019. This was even a huge jump from the year before. And the reason for that is Amazon's purchase of Whole Foods and the significant amount of Prime deliveries that resulted from that. And we are expecting this number to just like go through the roof as a result of the pandemic and people ordering food delivery at home. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that number after when we look back at 2020 sales. And I just want to mention this, speaking of just 2020 changes in consumer behavior, because people are cooking at home more, spending more at the grocery store, we are really expecting to see a huge increase in sales in 2020 as compared to the growth rate that has kind of slowed in 2018 and 2019. So our 2020 growth numbers will be out in, I believe, May of 2021. So it will be really interesting to look back and see how the market has changed. So all of that to kind of tee up a consumer poll that we ran earlier this year as shopping patterns changed because of the COVID pandemic. So we ran this consumer poll, and I just wanted to share a few key takeaways with you. First, we learned in the immediacy, organic is more important than ever. So consumers are turning to food that they know is healthy. Consumers really trust the USDA organic label as a robust, government verified, safe food product. And so we've just seen, consumers turn to that as they look for the safest possible food for them, for their families, as we navigate this like very uncertain time. Second, shoppers are prioritizing produce, dairy, and meat in their purchases. The produce and dairy go with overall organic sales. The meat, we're seeing consumers going back to like cooking staples that they, like feel good kind of cooking. Before the pandemic, the rise of Beyond Meat and meat substitutes were really growing, and to a large extent that is still the case. However, when it comes to health, consumers are really falling back on ingredients and food products that they know well. I heard something interesting on a discussion on trends yesterday that was like before the pandemic, cookbook sales that focused on like keto and like raw diets and all that was like the trend. And then as soon as the pandemic hit, everybody went back to buying cookbooks that were like comfort food, home cooking, things like that. So we're really seeing a regression towards like feel good food that we know. Consumers are willing to experiment with new products. So that aside, because we are spending more time cooking at home, consumers are willing to kind of branch out a little bit. You get tired of cooking chicken and rice every night, so they're really willing to try new products and new recipes. Next, it's a complicated time to shop for groceries. Like I mentioned, we're just expecting e-commerce to stay as a really predominant market player, even once, maybe consumers feel better going back to the grocery store again. And lastly, kind of leading into that, these changes will have a lasting impact. We are expecting the e-commerce market to grow and stay strong. We are anticipating that a lot of shoppers that kind of leaned in on organic, depending on how the overall economy shifts over the next couple of years, that they will continue to be organic purchasers. So I briefly want to get into a little bit of trade data. Our estimated exports out of the United States were about 3.3 billion in 2019. Our imports that we can track are 2.2 billion. And the reason that the first number is an estimate and this import number is selected is because there's only about 100 HS codes, which are the codes that we use to track products coming in and out of the United States. There's only about 100 of those for organic. There's about 45 for exports, 55 for imports. So you're thinking 100 codes, there's thousands of organic products out there. So there's a lot that we're not tracking. So we do an export estimate every year. We don't do the same at this point for imports, but that's why those numbers are kind of shaky. The real import number is in reality much higher. That 2.2 billion just covers the 55 products that we're actually able to measure. We have organic equivalence arrangements with 6 countries: Canada, the EU, Switzerland, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Taiwan was just recently signed this year. why do we have organic equivalence arrangements? As countries continue to develop their domestic organic market and governments develop government standards for organic, it increasingly becomes a little more complicated to do trade and sell products as organic in other countries. So import requirements are barriers to trade. Just the amount of paperwork, the cost of certification is, can be a detriment to especially small and medium-sized companies that are trying to sell their products. So the goal of organic equivalence is to reduce the paperwork burden, reduce the cost burden, and allow especially smaller companies to be able to trade their products all over the world. And this graphic just gives a kind of visual representation of where we are with equivalence arrangements around the world. One thing I want to point out that's really important is organic equivalence does not mean that your standards are word for word the same. It means that the key points and the key integrity of the standards is the same, even though there might be some differentiation on like allowed substances, allowed products. The general sense of the standards are the same, and really just maintaining integrity in the organic label is at the end of the day what's key. As we look toward any potential equivalence arrangements across Africa, a starting point for an equivalence arrangement is a standard to negotiate equivalence with. So there has to be a local standard in place first, government verified, etc. And I know some of my other presenters can maybe get into that a little bit more. Briefly, our top import and export partners are export destinations, mostly other advanced urban just kind of mega economies around the world, especially those we have organic equivalence arrangements with. Our import partners, mostly from South America, a few from Europe. You'll notice on the far right here, the USDA organic logo. Below that is the EU organic logo, and below that is the Japanese organic label. Our imported and exported products, mostly fresh produce, it's a result of the codes that I mentioned before. So our codes mostly track fresh product, especially in regards to exports. Imports, there's a little more variety, as you can see, but it is really fresh produce focused, and this is a direct result of the codes that we have tracked by the US government. Just wanted to touch briefly on imports from across Africa. The graph on the left is part of our industry survey. Ingredient importers responded to where do you import your organic ingredients. 30% of them are importing at least some of their ingredients from somewhere in Africa. Unfortunately, it's not broken out further than that. These top 10 import partners, I would have broken this out further based on the countries that are here for this webinar today, but about 80% of our imports from Africa come from Tunisia and Ethiopia. So I think that that's just an important preface to state, these total imports were about 73 million, and a little over 60 of that came from just Tunisia and Ethiopia. Lastly, before I wrap up, just a couple of resources for you to be aware of. The first, this Global Organic Trade Guide basically gives organic market data for about 35 countries around the world. So it talks about key players in the market, key sectors for growth, what products are doing really well, globalorganictrade.com. And lastly, find.organic is basically our online directory of USDA NOP certified organic products. So if you want to search for a product, you can put it in the box. Companies will come up. It includes contact information. So this is just a great web directory, free to use. And with that, I will wrap it up. Thank you so much again for the opportunity to speak with all of you today. My email is below. Please feel free to get in touch with me, and hope to work with some of you in the future. Thank you.
Alexis, thank you very much for such an insightful presentation. touching on the market trends in the United States. You touched on a number of very important areas showing actually the growth. For example, in under a decade, the market has grown from 22 billion in the US to 55 billion in 2019. So 2010 to 2019, that's a massive growth. And you have also indicated that there's space for more products in the US. What's also interested me is the fact that there is 73 million that is being imported from Africa, although 80% is Tunisia and Ethiopia. I'm hoping that Southern Africa region will feature as some of the top, at the very top 3 suppliers of organic products into the United States. You also touched on organic, the key import partners, and Africa is not, the top 10 is not featuring there. You touched on organic equivalence. I think those are very important things that we would also want to discuss going forward. Right. Thank you so much, Alexis.
Thank you.
Right. Before I call upon the next presenter, can I just remind participants to post their questions in the chat box? The questions will be harvested, and then we'll have a question and answer session after all the presenters have presented. Right. Now, moving on to our next presenter, that's Mark Washburn. So Mark Washburn is not a stranger to Southern Africa. He has traveled the length and breadth of the region. He has been to Mozambique. He has been to Maputo, Lilongwe, Lusaka, all those places. And he runs Jumbo Trading. And Jumbo Trading is also, for your information, has imported from the region. He has imported macadamia nuts from the region. So we presenting a company that has some experience importing from the region and also from East Africa. Jumbo Trading searches the word for distinctly unique. I'm reading that verbatim because of the description there. It searches the word for distinctly unique products that have high market potential in the world and partners with producers in order for them to become US compliant. So it's not just importing, but it's also developing and establishing partnerships. So allow me to hand over the mic to Mark Washburn. Mark, it's over to you. Mark, we can't hear you. Yeah, but we can see your screen now, but we can't hear you. Okay, so what we can do, Mark, is we can have someone project your presentation, and then you can do the speaking. Tanya, can you chip in?
Yes, I can gladly. I would need Mark to unshare his screen so I can proceed and project his screen for him. Thank you. There we go.
Thanks. But Mark, seems like we cannot hear you. We're not sure what the problem is.
Cosmas, may I suggest that Mark gets off the stage and then try to come back?
Yeah, Mark, can you try that? Can you exit then rejoin? Yes, thank you. Sincere apologies about that glitch. I'm hopeful that you to be sorted momentarily. We're just trying to help Mark to rejoin. Meanwhile, please post your questions, and also please note that the presentations will be shared with all the participants.
How about now?
Yes, that's it, Mark.
Great. Let me see if
That's
I can get
great.
the presentation up there. Sorry, everybody.
Great.
And you probably can't. Is it presentation out there now? Can you see the presentation?
Yes, can you just put it on presentation mode?
Yeah. Aha.
Yes. Right,
Okay.
over to you, Mark.
Okay, thank you, and apologize for the issue. I'm in Costa Rica right now, so maybe it's could be an internet thing. But thank you so much, Kaz, Alexa. Great presentation, and George, thank you for the introduction. A little bit of background about who I am, and Kaz mentioned a little bit, but I've been in the food industry for 30 years, a little bit over 30 years. I started in the States more on design of processing facilities. I had moved out of the States, became a processor and exporting product into the United States. And I ran that business for about 12 years, sold the business. Then I became a consultant, and I wanted to share the ideas that I had to other countries. And this brought me into crazy countries, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, kind of made my way around and then ended up in Africa. And I was very impressed with what I found in Africa. I started in the eastern regions, Kenya, hence the name Jambo, and Uganda, and then worked my way to the southern area and just saw so much opportunity, products that are being produced in Africa. But the exports in the United States were quite low. And so part of my work was to work with processors to get them up to speed to meet the requirements of the United States. And I found there was a lot of misinformation and a lot of how do we do this? And so I spent a number of years working with processors to get them up to speed and then linking them with buyers in United States. Organics were quite interesting for me in Africa, and I found a lot of companies that were producing products and using very little pesticides, and technically they thought this was an organic product, but we had to work with them and said you have to be certified to be considered organic in the United States. I'll go more into that. But I saw these opportunities and decided, hey, I'm going to start a trading company and work with processors in the regions of Africa and find products that I think that have a demand in the United States, and then move it over and to the United States and sell it to buyers. I like organics, and as Alexis had mentioned, the growth of organic is tremendous. And this graph only goes to 2016, and now, as Alexis had mentioned, it's now over $50 billion in sales. You have the organic food sales and you have the non-food sales, which I'll go into in a little bit. Here's a graph that kind of breaks it down, as Alexis did, into 5 different categories. And The one, you can see the fresh fruits and vegetables is the dominant factor here. But you do see others. And these others is a growing area. And I think it goes hand in hand with the meat, fish, and poultry products. And why I point this out, it's in order to offer an organic meats, whether it be pork, chicken, beef, you got to feed them organic products. And one of the areas that we got into is we import a tremendous amount of organic soybeans into the United States. United States only produces maybe 50% of their organic needs for animal feed. So the rest of that is imported from around the world. And that's a growing segment. You see that the meat, fish, and poultry, it's growing. It's the dark blue and it's small, but that's a growing segment, as Alexis had mentioned. And you got to feed these things. So I think that there's a interesting market for people wanting to get into organics for the animal feeds. The barriers of entry much lower, and I'll go into a little bit of detail in that, but it's an interesting market as well. So before you export, and I had to say this over and over and over, the definition of organic products, and yes, you guys are producing an organic product, but without a third-party audit or certifications through ECHO, CERT, or USDA, or whoever you're going to use, you have to certify your product. It's a process, and it could be quick. We helped certify a number of different companies in Madagascar, and some of it was very quick. But if the land was using pesticides, then it could be a longer process. But the certification process is truly a must if you want to sell your product in the United States under organic. Other required certificates, and I put required in quotations. The FDA, which is a U.S. regulating party, they don't require a whole lot other than you register with the FDA. And depending on the product, some products they might require a little bit more, but not a whole lot. But the buyers in the United States are under a tremendous amount of regulation. And if you want to export in the United States, there's real basic third-party audits. Almost all of them ask for some type of a BRC or an equivalent. You have to go through that process, and that could take some time. HACCP, I'm a big believer of HACCP. You can look it up online. Having a HACCP program in your plant can save you a tremendous amount of headaches, and almost every buyer in the States will require HACCP. FDA registration, I ran into a lot of misinformation in Africa and people saying that you pay us money, we'll get you registered. No, it's free. Anybody can register for the FDA registration. You go online and you can do that. And I've helped, 50 companies sign up for FDA registration, and it's pretty straightforward. I put in there FDA approved kill step. These are you've probably heard log 1 to log 5, the different kill steps. FDA doesn't require it, but they do regulate it. And I think that Philip was asking regarding baobab powder, how to get that into the States. I worked really hard to get baobab powder in the United States, Philip. And the issue I had is it had to run through a kill step. And basically that could be steam, like they use in teas, which South Africa is quite strong in teas. And I think there's a number of companies in South Africa that will run your baobab powder into a kill step. And then once you have that, looking for buyers in the United States, it will be much easier. I actually had the buyer from Whole Foods with me in Madagascar, and she wouldn't even look at it unless she knew it went through a kill step. The harmonized system code, this is a tricky one, and put some time into this one, because sometimes you can import your product in the United States under different harmonized system codes. These are international codes that everybody kind of uses the same codes. There might be some differences from country to country, but one code you might have to pay a 15% duty, and another code you might pay a 3% duty. And usually import brokers or importers in the States that can help you with that process, and you can find them online. This is an example. This is, as Kaz had mentioned, we bring in macadamias from Kenya and South Africa. One of our buyers is a company, I don't know if you have them in Africa, it's in the region, it's Subway sandwiches. In order to supply Subway sandwiches, there's about 30 items that we have to fill out and send to the buyer before they'll even look at our product. And it's painful. It's painful. But being said, I'm not an expert in this area. I do quite a bit of it, but it's a moving target every month. The rules might change a little bit. But I use an import company that handles all this. They pay them a flat fee, could be anywhere from $300-400 to $1,000 per container. They handle everything. You can find these guys online. You can talk to people that are already exporting into the United States and ask them who they're using. And usually people are pretty open, say, hey, use these guys. They're great, and you can negotiate your fees. You do this, and it although it's it's a bit of money, $1,000 could be a lot of money, but it will save you tremendous headaches at the borders. These are a few of the items that I looked at during my time in Africa, and these are organics. Honey, I think that was in Zambia. Baobab powder, there's a number of different countries. Love this product, and when I saw Philip's comment, it really sparked a few memories. Soybeans. Devil's Claw, I tried. That's a unique product in your region, and it's kind of this up and coming thing. But I haven't had luck finding a connection there. But I do believe there's something there with Devil's Claw. Assortment of spices. Madagascar is big on that. Teas. You've got pretty much many countries offering tea from Africa. Vanilla. We all know where that comes from, although Uganda also does an organic vanilla. Mangoes, you got them everywhere. And dried mango is something I think is very interesting. The quality of mangoes that I found in especially South Africa are impressive. They blow away, hope nobody from Mexico's on this, they blow away Mexico and other countries in terms of the flavor profile. We're going to try to bring some in this year. Pineapple is also something else. Avocado, big up and coming product. Africa, and I always cite Africa as a continent, but more and more companies in Africa. Kenya is becoming bigger and bigger in avocados. I know South Africa is starting to build up in avocado. That's really up and coming. And the the avocado oil, it's a unique product. It has a higher smoke rate. So for cooking, for chefs, that's a high demand product. It's a little bit unknown because it's relatively new, but I think it's growing. And of course, organic, everybody's moving organic avocado oil, which Kenya now offers. Great product. Vegetables, I put IQF, which is individually quick frozen. I didn't find a whole lot of frozen items in Africa, but if somebody does put in a system for IQF, individually quick frozen, that means bringing chopping it up and bringing it down to minus 15 degrees. And then selling it frozen, shipping it out frozen. There's a big market for that. And of course, macadamias and cashews, Mozambique is a leader certainly in that area. Market segments. Before I started looking at the United States, I wanted to know what market did I want to go after. And so I break it down into 4 segments. You have the industrial, which basically means you're selling bulk. This can be a container that's just no packaging at all. You just load it up with soybean, for example, and ship it out. You save on packaging costs, and of course, you can maximize your container weights. But also macadamia. I consider industrial 25 pounders, 25-pound box, or I don't know, 11.3 kilo boxes. This will go into the United States for either repacking, and one of our customers in the States is Whole Foods. So it goes through a repacker, they repackage it, and then it goes off to Whole Foods. And I consider that kind of an industrial because we are only involved in supplying the raw material for the repacker. But also you can do smaller pieces that go into cookies, like in the case of Subway. Food service. It's been a heck of a year for food service in the United States and around the world. But food service would be, the restaurants, hotels, hospitals, military. It's an interesting, great market, and it's not quite bulk, but they use larger packaging, as you can imagine. It's a market that I've done very well with over the years, but 2020 was a struggle. Retail, through the COVID, retail has been spectacular in the States. The supermarkets, some of the supermarkets couldn't keep the product on the shelf. There's been shortages of items, but the supermarkets are certainly good. An interesting market to get into. The packaging for that is complicated, and there's many things about the supermarkets. If you're not familiar with them, it's my advice is to start in the industrial and kind of work your way up to food service and then eventually retail. And then you have specialty stores, which is an interesting. These are smaller stores that really do focus on organics, and you can find them all over the United States. You can go online and find these specialty stores. I like them. The barriers of entry are quite lower. They'll work with you, and they're looking for unique and special products. Then you have online sales. As Alexis had mentioned, it's a growing market, and something I'll talk about in a little bit. But of course, you have Amazon, and then you have one that we're using now called Shopify. And then, of course, you have your website that you can sell off your website. How do you connect? And I think I'm gonna pick on Philip because he goes, how do I find a buyer? Yeah, good question. And this year's probably been a little more complicated than other years. Trade shows, that's my go-to, except for 2020 since there aren't any trade shows. But there's trade shows, Fancy Food Show, Natural Products, BioFach in Germany and Seattle, et cetera, et cetera. So although they're not in the United States, the buyers in the United States go to these shows as well. So you can find buyers pretty much everywhere around the world because they're looking for new and different products, as well as you're looking for buyers that are looking for new and different products. Now, when you go to the trade shows, I'll talk about it, although maybe it'll start next year. You don't have to have a booth, and that can be expensive. But walking the floor is a tremendous way to find out what the heck is going on. And you can see the trends, you can see the packaging, and you'll walk away from some of these shows having a pretty good idea of where the market is heading. And I think it's important for you as a processor or grower to say, oh, okay, I have this product, I have Baba. What can I do with this? Can I sell it bulk? Can I package it in a really cool looking package? What is the market looking for? And I think that these shows are good for that. Also, you can get the list of who's attending, and you can set up meetings before the show, or before the shows, and meet them during the shows. And I think that that's it's not that complicated to do, and it's highly recommended. Brokers and traders, yeah, you got to find brokers and traders in the States, and that can be a challenge. I always looking for new brokers and traders that I can sell product to. Normally, I sell direct, but I'm always looking for somebody new and different. LinkedIn is great. I joined LinkedIn a number of years ago, and I built it up to I don't know how many thousands of people I have on LinkedIn. And you can type in LinkedIn what a product that you might be producing and find out who's involved in that industry, and then connect with them, and then you can talk with them. Even when you go to connect with them, you can send 300 characters, and you can tell them in that 300 characters, I want to link with you because I've got this product. And I think that that's a great source to find brokers and traders. Trade shows directories. This sounds horrible, but I've done this. I'll call up some of these trade shows and say, hey, I'm looking to attend. Can you send me the list of participants? And they do. And with that list of participants, you can get information. You can find out who's doing what. Usually gives their email and their phone number, and that's a backdoor into finding brokers and traders. Container trade database, there's plenty of them. First of all, this information, container information, is public information, but to try to cipher through it is very complicated. You can join one of these organizations or one of these companies and $99 a month. You can do it for a month, get all the information you need, and it'll tell you who's moving what, where, when, and how. A lot of information there, and I recommend it. COVID-19 options. What's trending. I'll go onto Amazon, look at the food products, and see what's moving, and you can get a pretty good idea of what people are doing. It's kind of like going to a trade show, but it's a little bit different. Also, supermarkets, Walmart, whatnot, they have websites. You can go on there and see what they're offering on their websites and see what's moving. Contacts, I put here pull versus push. And what do I mean by this? Is I think in parallel with looking for people, building your own company and building your own presence on the internet is, I'm going to say, a must. Now, in the past, we used company websites, and I said yes and no. I think having a company website is important, because people will look for you on LinkedIn, and then they'll go to your website to see if you're for real. That's kind of like a confirmation. But then that's all they kind of do. And then they look for things like Amazon, or they'll look for, in our case, they'll go back onto our what do you call it? They'll go back onto our Shopify, and then they'll buy the product. But they usually go to our website to see if we're a legit company. So yeah, company website is, I would say it's a must, but I wouldn't. Trying to sell off your company website, that can be complicated and very expensive, versus something like Shopify is relatively cheap. So here's an example of LinkedIn. I just typed in organic food buyers, and I think there was 15 pages here. This is a great resource to find information. Also, Alexis had mentioned that their website gives you a lot of information there as well. So the information is on the internet. This was a trade show directory of American Frozen Food Institute, and it was about 90 pages. And you can see here, it gives you the name of the company and pretty much an idea about what they do. Very useful. And you just start cold calling or sending emails, or emails with a cold call follow-up. Zauba is a company that offers the service for checking out your containers and what's moving, where it's moving. A lot of information there. You can see, you can subscribe for $99 a month. Honestly, I don't think you need it for the whole year, because after you have the 1 month of what's going on, it'll give you an idea of what products are moving from where to who, how, when, and volumes. This is a Shopify company here that sells nuts. And this is ours right here. And I jumped over this one real quick because this took us about a week to put together. And now we're selling, I don't know, it's in Spanish. And this is one that we actually started up for Costa Rica. And we probably are now selling about $5,000 a month off of it. And it's pretty crazy. And you can see these are organic products. And here's a case of, you look at the statistics, the amount of organics in Costa Rica consumed didn't look very big. But we started going, making some questionnaires out to the public. And there was a pretty big underground of organic consumers. And now we're bringing product in from the States to Costa Rica, and the volumes are quite impressive. I bring this up because this seminar is not about Costa Rica, but in Africa, and certainly I probably would think South Africa, there is consumption of organic products, and people are looking for that. And starting a Shopify or starting something like that in your own country or in neighboring countries makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense, and it helps you get an idea of what's going on and at least get things moving. And then once you go from there, moving into the States makes, that would be a next step. I put here barriers of entry. These are some of the things that I found when I was in Africa. The certification process, it's expensive, it's time consuming, and yeah, it's a process. But it's something that you pretty much have to do to get into the United States. Logistics, shipping product to the States, you want to maximize your containers. So you're talking, anywhere from 18 to 20,000 kilos. That's a lot of product for a small company. So that can be a barrier because, how long does it take you to produce that first container in order to get that out? But being said, there are shipping companies that will do consolidated shipments. I actually shipped 5 pallets to the United States of macadamias. It was the exact same amount of money on logistics. So there are companies out there that will offer LTLs or sharing. So that works as well. Or you can find other exporters, and sometimes you can pick up some of their space. So there's ways to get around the logistics. Cash flow, yes. Buyers normally want credit. The way that works is, what I can speak from Kenya, it's about 60 days shipping time. They say it's less, but it's about 60. South Africa, it probably runs us, they say 30, but it's about 45 days to ship to the States. A lot of buyers, they want their product, they want to be able to look at it before they pay. So it's 15 days after delivery. So you're talking about floating your product, cash flow for about 60 days. And plus all the time it took to process it. So the cash flow can be an issue in dealing in the States if you're moving big volumes. Initial contacts, finding the right buyer, but I think I gave you a couple ideas that hopefully you can run with. And they've worked for me, and I'm sure they can work for you. Competition, you got to think about this. There's a lot of other countries offering organic products. India's big, Turkey's big, and China's big. You got to compete with these guys, and that can always be an issue. If you get really unique products like baobab powder or tiger's claw, whatnot, these are things that they really can't produce, can't offer. Or if you got a really unique product, then you probably aren't worried so much about the competition if it's very unique. Regulatory issues. This is another issue that you got to look at. Sometimes the United States has quotas on certain products, or they have country exclusions. There's some countries in Africa that cannot import soybeans into the United States. But again, this is something that if you find a good importer, they know all this information, and it's also on the internet. If your country has an issue with certain products. Personal experiences, and this is something I always think is valuable, because I think you're all kind of in the same boat that I was or am in a lot of ways. First, I always run my market analysis. I subscribe to the companies that offer the information on the containers. This gives me a macro idea of who's processing, and sometimes you get prices on there as well, and who's buying. So you can pick up buyers on there and whatnot, and where the product's going. Is it going to the West Coast, East Coast? Where's the focus on the products, and these companies will give you that information. Also, normally this information will also tell you if the product is conventional or organic, so you can find out where that's being shipped. Trade shows, we talked about that, and I think trade shows are a must, and pray to God that next year that they start having trade shows once again. Walking the floor, I can't emphasize that enough. You take some of these big shows like the Expo West. It can take you 3 days to walk the show. They're huge shows. Logistics, import duties, trade agreements, import duties, trade agreements. You can find all this through import companies. This can be a big barrier for a lot of people, and they're like, well, how do I do this? Once you find an importer, they can handle everything. That takes a big load off of your shoulders, because once the product gets to, they can actually work with you to ship the product from your warehouse to the port, handle all the documentation, and then send it to the final customer. And they'll give you more or less an estimate, pretty close. They're always within, I don't know, $400 of what it actually costs to get that product to the final customer. And so once you get the logistics side, that's a big part of the equation. Again, look at your target markets. Do you want to go for retail, food service, industrial, or online sales, or a combination of 1, 2, or 3? So in conclusion, guys, exporting U.S., it can be challenging, and for everybody, it can be challenging, but it's definitely possible, and something you got to look at, because as Alexis had mentioned, it's a big market. It's the biggest in the world. And I think it's the future. I think more and more people are looking in that area, because they're trusting processors less and less, and there's plenty of room for everybody. So remember your certifications and documents. I can follow up and send you information on what's needed. Know your target market, visit the trade shows, walk the floors, Do your online research, and when you pick somebody, ask them for references and call the references. There's some guys out there. Usually, most of them are pretty good in the food industry, but every once in a while, you get some cowboys, as we call them, and you probably want to stay away from those guys. So make sure you do your research. And that's it on my part. Thank you guys so much.
Mark Rushben, thank you so much for the presentation. Very insightful from a buyer perspective and from someone who has been exporting to the United States as well. So that's very important information that you shared with us today. And you covered very critical aspects as well. For example, when you spoke about the Q step, the importance of a Q step in the production process, you also touched on a certification to say yes, organic certification, but there are other requirements, buyer requirements that we also have to pay attention to. So which calls for the need for market intelligence. You gave a list of a number of products that we could also focus on, and I'm happy that the region, Southern Africa, is endowed with such products that we can take advantage of and export to the United States. In your introduction, you mentioned that without third-party audit or certification, the market would not respond to your claims of having organic certification. Next up, we've got Daniel Potsia. Is with organic EcoSet. Is with EcoSet. So he's the organic certifier. We have a relationship with them. We held a symposium with them last year, and most companies actually benefited from what they had to share. So today we've got EcoSet, Southern Africa. Daniel Potsia is the country manager, and he's going to take us through the certification process. We have heard about the US market trends. We have heard about buyer requirements. So the next question really is, so how do we get certified? We have seen some of the questions that are popping up that are touching on certification. So I'll call upon Daniel to take us through the certification process. Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Kos. And thanks, Mark and Alexis, as well for excellent presentations with very valuable information. So my talk is going to be on specifically organic farm certification. And because we have a focus on trade with the US, it's going to be based on the National Organic Program. And a lot of people actually confuse the terminology and they're not sure what the NOP is and for which country, because if you are certified according to the National Organic Program, you're allowed to use the USDA organic seal. So the United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, they have subdivisions, and one of the programs under the USDA, the organic program, is called the National Organic Program. So that's why some people say they want to be certified USDA organic. Some people say NOP. So this is the name of the specific program. And before I start, I'm just going to give a brief introduction on the company. So I work for EcoCert, and we're a service provider offering certification, training, and also consultation. Certification at the moment makes up the biggest chunk of our business. And in the middle there of the screen, you can see the green building head office that we have in our head office is in France, in the southern part of France. But we also have 26 subsidiaries around the world outside of France. And one of these subsidiaries is South Africa. So that's the one that I work for. And we have been doing certification for almost 30 years now. And globally, we're the leader in organic certification. And this was also the core and the start of the company. And it remains that. We're also the leader in organic cosmetic certification. So looking at the different national standards, some of the other speakers already touched on it. we have the USDA, the National Organic Program. Then we have the European Organic Standard, and we certify according to an equivalent EcoCert Organic Standard, the Japanese Organic Standard, and then also the Korean Organic Regulation that we certify against. There's a lot of others as well, and one of the big ones now is China that has their own organic regulations, and also Taiwan that's got their own regulations now. And there has been a lot of requests as well to our company, so it's also possible that we will soon certify against those standards as well. Unfortunately, and I think you could have seen the slide that Alexis showed with equivalencies, there was unfortunately none of the lines crossed or came to South Africa or Southern Africa. So if you want to export your product to any of these countries, you can't just be certified for one standard and they would accept it as an equivalent in the other standard. So for instance, if you are certified according to the EU standard, they would not take in your product in the United States as organic, because they see Southern Africa as third countries, meaning that we are outside the area of regulation. So we're outside the EU or we're outside the United States. And then in the company, we also offer some other private, sustainable, and social standards. Some of them, our fair trade standard is called Fair for Life. And then one that's really trending at the moment is also Rainforest Alliance. That's merged with, a lot of you will know the UTZ or UTZ standard as well. And then some private standards, which is a combination of social and organic for Switzerland's BioSwiss and then the German Naturland. So what can you certify under these standards? Under the EU standard, we only do food products, livestock, beekeeping and feed. We can't do any hunting or fishing or pet food, and also not cosmetics. For cosmetics, they have their own standard, which is called the Cosmos standard, so Cosmetic Organic Standard of Europe. And then under the National Organic Program, it's a lot broader. So you can, any agricultural product you can certify. The only exclusion there is aquaculture and wild animals. And then just looking at a breakdown of the produce in Southern Africa, according to our client base, the largest majority of that is in beverage crops. And one of the reasons for that is that rooibos is an extremely popular product in many countries overseas. So it's a very strong export market, and it's also not a difficult crop to grow organic. There's food also makes up quite a portion. Strangely enough, South Africa is one of the largest fresh fruit exporters in the world, but we have very, very little organic fresh produce, fruits and vegetables that we export. So I think there's a lot of room for growth on that side. Medicinals, we also mentioned devil's claw, baobab powder, moringa powder, a lot of interesting products that comes from Southern Africa. We also attest inputs for use in organic agriculture, which makes up about 12% of our client base. And then cosmetic ingredients, so large volumes of essential oils. There's a big movement on switching sugarcane fields over to organic tea tree fields in KwaZulu-Natal at the moment going on. And then the wine sector is also, it's still very small, but year by year it's growing quite fast. And we just started touching on the livestock. So there's very few clients at the moment that's doing organic livestock, mostly due to the market. There's a very small market for organic meat, I think, being produced locally. And also the fact that you have to have, you can't just have your farm, you also have to have your abattoir certified as well. So that can be quite a stumbling block. So how does it work when you just start out and you want to become organic? You can't apply for certification and tomorrow you can sell your organic produce. Unfortunately, it takes time. So if you are farming conventionally and you're using conventional inputs, it's going to take a period of 3 years before you'll be able to sell any organic produce. You can also, if for instance, a field has been fallow for 3 years, or you have farmed organically for 3 years and you have enough proof, we can also accept the produce immediately as organic. So I've just added an example here of a disallowed substance being used in January 2016 on a grape farm. And normally the harvest would be in February. So this would mean you would have a 3-year period. In January 2019, your field or your farm would come out of conversion. And it means that you would be able to sell your grapes as organic. What type of planting material is allowed? So, and this is also a very tricky point because the first prize is always to be able to plant organic seeds or annual seedlings or planting stock. There are, however, there are exceptions, and it's quite important for us as well that there are exceptions because there's very little commercially available certified organic planting stock or seeds available in our sub-region. So the certification bodies would be allowed to also accept, in the case of seed, untreated conventional seed, if the client can prove that there's no organic certified seed commercially available. The same for planting stock. Unfortunately, for annual seedlings, this is not the case. So you would always have to have certified organic annual seedlings. And then if you do use planting stock, you can plant non-organic planting stock, but it would need to be maintained within an organic system and under organic management for at least 1 year before you can harvest organic produce. And then if there's a very specific governmental, federal or state phytosanitary regulations with regards to the treatment of either seed or seedlings or planting stock, this would also be accepted. Now I'm just going to quickly look at a few practices that's really important in organic agriculture. The first being crop rotation. So why is this such an important part? Because you maintain and you improve the soil organic matter. Obviously, you would also improve the management of the pests in your field, manage your plant nutrients, whether there's an excess of nutrients or deficiency. This would allow for balance in those nutrients, and it will also reduce your amount of erosion in your fields. Plant protection is a very important one, and this is where a lot of people also struggle in organics. So you need to be sure that your practices allow for the protection of the plant before looking outside at commercial products to be used. So make sure that you remove the vectors, the carriers of the diseases, manually if you have to. Remove the weed seeds. Make sure that you use the correct species or crop variety. A good example of this is rooibos, which is a plant that occurs naturally in South Africa, and it's planted in the areas where it grows naturally, and therefore it is actually adapted to the pests of that area and to the diseases of that area. So it's quite an easy crop to do organic. The introduction of predators or parasites. Make sure that you maintain the habitat for natural enemies or pests. I always say bring nature and biodiversity as close to your fields as possible to enable your larger insects to stay there, so that they can live on on the pests in your field. If you don't create housing for them, they're going to move to another farm. So that's quite important. And other options also like lures and traps and repellents, that's natural. And then weed control is also a big problem for organic farmers. They struggle because it's a lot of labor to manually remove if you can't use herbicides. So there are a few options that does not include herbicides, unfortunately. And this is different kinds of mulching, mowing, livestock grazing is a nice holistic one. And then also hand weeding, mechanical cultivation. And then some of the guys are starting to experiment in South Africa with steam machines that kills off the weeds, flaming or other electrical means. So after you've, if you can prove that you've, that you really have good agricultural practices, the practices that we just discussed, but you still have, there's still a need for either fertilization or pest control, then you can go to the national list. And in terms of NOP, they work with a positive and a negative list. So on the one hand, they say you can use natural substances, any natural substance you can find, except, and then they list natural substances you're not allowed to use. So this would be your negative list. And then they say all synthetic substances are banned. You can't use it in organic agriculture, except, and they have a positive list of allowed synthetic substances for use in agriculture. And then an interesting difference between being certified according to the EU standards and being certified according to the NOP is the NOP does allow for parallel production. So you can have one farm where you have a crop that's indistinguishable by the eye. So let's say you do conventional oranges, but you also do organic oranges on the same farm under the same legal entity. Whereas for the EU, they don't allow that. You have to have distinguishable crops. So you can do organic oranges and conventional lemons, or if you're a wine grape farmer, you can do organic red grapes and conventional white grapes, but you can't have an indistinguishable crop under both organic and conventional. So in this case, where it is allowed, they just say it's very important then to make sure that there's an adequate buffer between the two, and then obviously your traceability will be very important. Often we also get the question where farmers phone us and they say, listen, it's impossible for us to become certified because we have conventional neighbors, so we're not isolated enough. And important to note here is that it is possible to have an organic farm even though you have conventional neighbors around you. This definitely poses a greater risk, but it is possible. So also important to note there's no set distance, because people would ask you, how many meters would my conventional field and my organic field need to be apart, or from my neighboring field. There's no set distance. It all depends on the risk and how you manage it. So you need to ensure that the buffer you have there, whether it's a natural vegetation buffer or or it's shade netting or hedges that you've planted, that it's adequate, to prevent drift. You need to make sure that you talk to your neighbor and you have an agreement with your neighbor in terms of spraying, that he knows you're farming organically. And then also, if there's risk, to make sure that you can take your own samples, test for pesticide presence. And this can also be done by the auditors. Okay, so now we're moving on to the audit part, and this is a very scary part for a lot of people, and mostly because it's something unknown or it's very intimidating. But on the farming side especially, it's really straightforward, and my opinion is that everything that's required by the standards is also required to be a good farmer. Record keeping, good practices, making sure you write down everything that you do, I think is a great practice, and that's what it comes down to. So the first and most important document that you would have is your farm records, which is crucial because the auditor comes in 1 day or 2 days, maybe in a year. So it's impossible for him to stick around your farm for the whole year. So he basically gets a snapshot of what's happening on the farm, and therefore the records is really crucial for the auditor to see what's been happening throughout the year. And everyone has a different kind of record keeping template. So some people just write it in their diaries. Other people have really complicated systems that's web-based. But all that's needed is for the auditor to have access to this information. And where you would, if you are doing harvesting, or you're doing, you're hoeing the weeds, or you are putting down some chicken manure, it's just important then to write everything down, your quantities, what type of activity and which fields did the activity take place on. And then the most important documents on the farming side, I would say, is it's not a lot. It's your field map indicating, you know, what's your neighbors doing, the names of the fields, if there's any risk, and then if you are buying in agricultural inputs, make sure you have guarantees or attestations to prove that they're allowed for use in organic agriculture, and obviously your invoices, your purchasing, but then also if you are selling your produce, to make sure you keep your sales invoices, especially if you are selling both organic and conventional. It's very